There have been many great moral systems throughout history, but I believe there are two that have been the most impactful and stand head and shoulders above the rest: Kant's categorical imperative and Jeremy Bentham's utilitarianism. Today I'm going to be comparing these ideas and seeing which one comes out on top. But before we get into that, I think I should give a brief introduction of both ideas. Those who don't know or are not familiar with Kant's categorical imperative, it states that you should act only according to a rule that you could rationally will to become a universal law. An example is, imagine you steal a candy bar from the store. The categorical imperative says this was wrong because imagine if everybody stole a candy bar from the store. Then all stores everywhere would collapse. To even apply it to the abstract moral principle of stealing, imagine if everybody stole. That would have huge complications on society. And this also goes the other way. Imagine if everybody did something positive, like donated money to charity. If you donate money to charity, and everybody does, then it would eradicate many problems in the world. So this becomes a moral good. For those of you who are not familiar with utilitarianism says that the action that creates the greatest good for the greatest number of people is the morally correct action. The key idea is that the best action is the one that brings the most good for the most people. An example of this would be the trolley problem, or one where you have to sacrifice one person to save a whole number of people. While their death is seen as tragic, it is seen as a morally correct option because it benefited the most amount of people. These two ideas are probably some of the most impactful moral systems in human history. They're so fundamental what people believe that most people can't even describe them or what they mean or who they're from. But if you ask most people their moral systems, they follow something like this. Like these ideas, utilitarianism and the categorical imperative, are like the moral sidewalk that people walk on every day, yet they don't know who made the sidewalk, they don't know who created it, why it's there, or anything. The original idea that made it in place. These ideas are so impactful that they have changed the course of human history and the way that we look at morality and we look at each other. One from Kant's categorical imperative because it recreated the moral ethic through reason, and it also applied it universally to where anybody in the world can follow this system and seek benefit from it. Utilitarianism has become essentially the pragmatist moral system. Any situation where you have to make a risk management decision, or if you have to say like, hey, this isn't the best option, some people are going to get hurt, but we have to make a decision, utilitarianism is there right by your side to help you. These two ideas are wildly impactful, but considering this is a competition, where we're comparing the moral systems to see which ones are better, utilitarianism has had a profound impact upon humans' decision making at almost any level. In any government, any corporation, utilitarian-like decisions are being made. So for that reason, I think I would give it the point here. Now, I do think it's kind of rich to point out a logical problem within a moral system, because moral systems can't really be judged unless they're being contrasted with another moral system. Like, for instance, utilitarianism. Utilitarians' big problem is that at the end of the day, they are harming a small amount of people. That's their big problem. But the issue with that is that if you have no competing moral system that can go against that, then what is wrong with hurting a small amount of people? Now, if I were to compare these systems within each other, like if I were to say, how does utilitarian ideas and decision-making fare under categorical imperative, it fails bad because utilitarian is a very loosey-goosey, like do-whatever system depending upon the situation, while categorical imperative is like you have to do this, in this situation, every situation, it's exactly this decision. Utilitarianism depends more on the number of people involving in an action, while categorical imperative says murder is always wrong. Utilitarianism says murder is sometimes wrong, or can even be a good, depending on how many people that murder benefits. But now getting that logical issue out of the way of comparing moral systems, both of these worldviews do have their central problems or their monsters. For Kant's categorical imperative, it's the axe murderer. It basically says, imagine there's an axe murderer at your door who's asking who wants to kill your friend, and he's asking, is your friend home? The action that most people would take would be to lie and say, no, my friend's not home. Like, he's gone, he just left, he'll be back, or something like that. Now, with the categorical imperative, it says, under no circumstances should you lie. So this says, would you lie to the ex-murderer, or do you follow the categorical imperative and you tell him that your friend is there, which would lead to the death of your friend? And for the utilitarian monster, it goes by the name of literally the utilitarian monster. It's this idea that, imagine there was a being that received 10 times the amount of pleasure a regular human does. Let's say a human eats a cheeseburger and they receive 100 units of pleasure. Well, if the utilitarian monster ate that cheeseburger, he received 10,000 units of pleasure. So then, under utilitarianism, the moral good for society would be to pump all resources, all humans, and every action that we could take to make sure this monster receives pleasure. And the typical refutation is that this is a absurdist idea, is that it's reductio ad absurdum, is reducing utilitarian down to its most absurd elements. So that's sort of usually the refutation, because utilitarianism is often looked at as more of a pragmatic idea. That's something that is good in everyday decision making and reality, rather than in hypothetical, absurd concepts. But I disagree with that, because that is also usually contrasted by Kant's categorical imperative being not that good in real life, but also not that good in hypothetical because of the axe murderer thing. But I find an issue with that is that I think I can think of more pragmatic situations where utilitarianism will make you do a moral wrong than Kant's. Because I can think of many situations where a larger group of people want to make a decision that's going to affect a smaller group of people, and they go ahead with it because it doesn't matter, because they're the larger majority. So they basically control the rights and actions of that smaller majority. But with Kant's, it's more of something like, I think you could even boil down most situations to, like, it's still bad to lie, right? Even if the lie helps or does some benefit, or it's even just a little lie, it's still bad to lie. And often we don't see the consequences of our own actions and lies. So if you make a decision like that to lie, right, because you think it would be good, oftentimes you could have just told the truth and it would have been much better. And from that, I think categorical imperative has many less problems with it and less moral flaws than utilitarianism. So I will be giving categorical imperative the point on this one. These ideas sort of battle on the world stage in different ways. With Kant's, it's kind of harder to point to a singular outcome or event from his ideas. It's just kind of a general moral idea. I do think that if you adopted Kantian ideas, you would see benefit in your life. There would be a lot of modern day discussions that are kind of pointless under the Kantian idea. Like the idea that, is it okay to steal from large corporations? It's just easy logic. Steal bad. Stealing from corporations is still stealing. You shouldn't steal. While I think utilitarianism, you can actually point to real world examples of these ideas being taken place. Like any example where a corporation or a government or anything has to make a decision where they choose the larger amount of people rather than the smaller minority of people. You can even apply that to our system of government, which is like democracy. Democracy is essentially a utilitarian idea where it says like this larger amount of people decide something and it affects everybody, even the smaller amount of people, usually subjugating the smaller amount of people. So for that reason, I think that Kantian ethics is a lot more hypothetical while also being a lot more realistic in a weird way, because you can actually make noticeable changes in your life and how you approach people, rather than what utilitarianism views them as a means to people's pleasure. That's kind of what utilitarianism views people as, is as a means to other people's pleasure. So for this one, I will be giving the categorical imperative a point. It might be unfair. I think it comes away with the point from this one. So for those of you who have been keeping score, the categorical imperative is the winner. It really, in my opinion, clears head and shoulders over utilitarianism. And the original reason I made this video was because I feel like people afford a certain amount of charitability to utilitarianism that they don't really give to Kant's categorical imperative. Like, they refer to utilitarian as a good idea, just not in hypothetical. Like, it's a really good pragmatic idea. It just has some hypothetical problems. But Kant says more of a problem where it doesn't really work in pragmatic context, and also doesn't really work in a hypothetical context because it has, that one axe murderer problem, which I disagree. I think Kant is a much more realistic, pragmatic idea where you can usually run into a situation where it applies and you'll come out with a overall moral good rather than utilitarianism. There are so many problems with utilitarianism, yet it's still probably, I would say, probably one of the most used moral systems in the world. So this video is really just a compare and contrast and really kind of question, why does it have this favorability even though it loses out to other moral systems? But yeah, I just want to say thank you guys for watching. Thank you for, if you do make it to the end, make sure to subscribe, like, comment, share, do whatever. This was a fun video to make. This video kind of just came to me randomly while I was listening to Humean philosophy, which was pretty funny. But yeah, thank you for watching.